emergency response plans. He has over 3 decades of experience delivering services in municipal operations, administration, and legislation in the province of Alberta. He's an expert in leading multidisciplinary ventures through all stages, including funding, procurement, technical design, regulatory approval, construction, and commissioning. Darwin has overseen energy management projects and municipal disaster responses. He worked for the Government of Canada as the site manager for the 2002 G8 Summit in Kananaskis, as well as the 2010 G8 and G20 Summits in Deerhurst and Toronto. Ladies and gentlemen, Darwin Durnie.
Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me fine while we adjust the mic? Thanks for the introduction, John. I just got to move that. It's just habit from the G8s and G20s and World Leaders meetings. Once upon a time, there was some flowers that were too high on one of the tables that the leaders sat at in Kananaskis, and next thing we knew that one of the folks were making a salad out of the flower arrangement. So anyways, hopefully everybody can see through now and see where we're at. So thank you for inviting me to be here. This morning's presentation and discussion that I'm going to have with you is, I guess, set to evoke some thought and maybe provoke some thoughts as to where we're at in the risky business of water. You're all in the water business, I'm going to assume, and that's why you're here. And there's risks that we have to take, and there's risks that we mitigate, and there's risks that we manage, and there's some risks that we make go away. But there's always a risk there. How many of you did attend the FCM this week? Great, as did I. How many are from private industry? Excellent. Conservation authorities and municipalities? Excellent, excellent, great. So it's probably quite by accident that I've ended up in a lot of the scenarios and other areas that I'm going to discuss this morning. And even being here today, I think I was at a panel discussion with either OPWA or some other event in the wake of the flooding last year or 2 years ago in Alberta. And they said, hey, can you come back and speak here to the Credit Valley Association? I said, sure. So it's my privilege to be here today. I've spent a lot of time with the Canadian Public Works Association. I think I'm about my 8th year on the board and just finished up 4 years as president. And we've been able to do a lot of work on asset management, the report card on infrastructure. So I've got quite a few lenses that I've been able to view things through, and I just want to share with you today some of those, some examples of what we've done. So 3 things that I've been asked to talk about is resiliency and changing weather, my experiences at High River in 2013, and how the Envision tool, if you haven't heard of it, we'll talk about that a little bit, as to how it might be able to help with sustainability and planning for resiliency and or mitigation. Hurricane Hazel. It's quite interesting that the response to Hazel some 60 years ago really changed the way that Ontario looked at its whole watersheds. It was, I think the information said that it was about a year after the formation of the Credit Valley Authority that Hazel hit. But from that, there was a lot of adaptation that was done. And we adapt to those current events that happen. And those current events become our future. And they become what we work towards. So it has become our history, the legacy of something like Hazel. And the building resiliency and mitigation that's gone on over the last 60 years is a result of a current event. I'm going to go through these rather briskly so that we've got lots of time to interact at the end if there's any Q&A, but also to catch up on the schedule a little bit. The onion approach to preparedness. It's the same fundamentals to mitigation, is prepare layers. And in the water industry, we usually call it multiple barrier approach if it's water treatment. If we're designing security around a city to be able to make sure the bad guys don't get to what we sometimes call the good guys, We put up multiple barriers of fence and work through it that way. Well, flooding management for flood, that begins at home, where you have a 72-hour kit. And beyond that, the municipality has a responsibility to help you. And beyond that, Her Majesty, in the form of the province or Canada, then steps in and does further protection. So again, multiple barrier approach, or the onion approach, to be able to help us out. Source to tap on water, security. So one of the things in those multiple barrier approaches that we really like to do when we're designing treatment facilities for water or wastewater, when we set up a security perimeter, when we design something for an emergency response plan to earthquake, fire, flood, is wow, what a beautiful plan. And is it ever going to work nice? And we've thought of everything. Believe me, we haven't. Not even close. So step back for the moment and break something. Take one of the variables and increase it by a magnitude of 5 and see what happens. And based on that, figure out your next layer of response. Because what you've generally done to the point where we're satisfied with a design and we actually build it is we've developed it to what we believe is the normal. And up until 1964, when Hazel hit, everyone in Ontario thought that was the normal. It changed after that. 2013, Alberta changed how it's going to deal with it. Walkerton changed how we looked at things differently. So as I say, go beyond your preparedness, go beyond your plan, kick it, give it some variable changes that are just unexpected, and determine what do you do next. I've worked with a lot of communities, and you know, the response to that is the province will come help. That sometimes would be the scariest thing that could happen. Nevertheless, when they show up, they need your expertise as well. They need to know that you've thought this through. So it's a very, very important part of testing beyond the plan. Key mitigation measures with respect to flooding in particular. Flood modeling, prediction, warning system. Flood risk management policies, upstream water management mitigation, erosion control, local mitigation measures, and individual mitigation measures for the home. Again, multiple barriers, layers upon layers of trying to predict, and respond to what's going to take place in a community. Those key mitigation measures are kind of the worldwide approach to what you have. And again, what standard do you build to, and why have you built to that standard are very important. As a minimum, for resiliency and adaptation purposes, develop up-to-date floodplain maps. Many of them are 30 to 40 years old in a lot of places, and then the currency of those, a lot of development pressures happen, and especially through the 80s and late 70s, there wasn't a lot of big weather events happening in Canada and in North America for that matter. And we built a lot of things in a lot of places we might not should have. Weather hardened municipal and suburban infrastructure, physical and natural. And I've just seen lots of the literature that the Credit Valley Authority has done. Yeah, just great work to be able to bring creeks back to natural flowways, to develop bylaws and codes that don't allow people to build right in the rivers. That kind of stuff has to happen despite the pressures that we get both from industry and from our politicians. Finally, weather hardening the houses, adapt the building codes. You know, a couple key triggers to the damage rates going way up in Canada with respect to flooding was once mortgages were available in the late 40s, early 50s, people were able to enhance their homes a lot. Prior to that, they were a lot of lath and plaster, concrete things, maybe dugout basements, maybe they were on skids, maybe they were on some block basement. And following that, They got a lot bigger. They went to probably a little more flood-prone building materials, whether it's gyprock or whether it was some of the particle board that was used. And as such, became a lot of damage once they got wet. It was pretty tough to clean them up and flush them out and move forward again, or even with sanitary sewer backups. So weather hardening the houses to adapt to flooding, to have different shingles or siding, to adapt to hailstorms is probably something that should come forward. And launch a home adaptation audit program to make sure people are taking care of themselves and that they're following the guidelines, the rules. And sometimes those rules are prescribed by your insurance company, and more often than that, that's what ends up making you want to comply. So those were notes from a panel discussion we had with the Insurance Bureau last summer, and Dr. Blair Feltmate noted these these four minimums being what's necessary for resiliency and adaptation in a municipal and urban environment. Blair's from the U of W, I believe. The 1 in 100, and trying to get the public to understand that. Oftentimes, one of the things I try to explain is that we design storm sewers sometimes often to the 1 in 3 or the 1 in 5, which means it has a 33% or 50% chance or 20% chance of being overflown in any given day over a year, or a probability, and convert that to a game of chance, and explain to people how that relates to your odds on a roulette table, or how it's going to stack up against blackjack. Because it's just like the infrastructure deficit number. Say whatever you want, that it's 100 billion, it's 300 billion. People glaze over because they just don't get what that is. Try and put it into some relative term of what it is. Also, in Western Canada, for sure, we've been in a situation where it's pretty new. A lot of the areas have only been developed for maybe the last 40 to 60 years. Certainly the ancient stuff out west is like 100 or 120 years old. And we just don't have a lot of data. But we have some high water marks that are absolute. But when you do frequency analysis, sometimes those get chucked out. And I've been in long discussion and sometimes some pretty vivid arguments that high water marks are meaningful, and that maybe we better allow that to assist us in determining where the high water mark might be again, if it's that recent that we can still recognize it. So here we've got a bridge on the, I believe it's the Miami River in Ohio, where a high water mark occurred in the 1890s, and then also a prediction of a high water area. I wonder what the flood mapping looks like in those particular areas, whether it's to the 1 in 100, 1 in 200, 1 in 500. Be interesting to know. So it's a prediction tool. It's governed by what we can afford. Is generally where the 1 in 100 or whatever. It's a lot of discussion between the banks and the insurer. Not so much the insurers on floodwater, but certainly on the developers and the banking industry and where that might end up. So bottom line here, do we want to be precisely right or roughly wrong? I pick roughly wrong, and let's try and get it within a bit. I remember having a discussion with Alberta Environment on the freeboard on a dike that was going to be 1 foot of freeboard, 300, and we argued for days whether the 100 millimeters of sod should be considered part of the freeboard or not. It's just absolute madness. A block away, we're building a sound attenuation berm and just waking it. So, anyways, quite interesting what we trip over. Sometimes we don't communicate very well. Okay, this slide at the top's got CSEC, our Communications Security Canada, and at the bottom it's got some posters done up by CSIS, and in the middle is the weather event that smashed into the eastern slope of the Rockies, and the intensities of the high purples are the big rains of over a foot and whatnot. Sometimes what we fail to do is communicate, and nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to be the goat. So the weather forecaster doesn't want to get his forecast wrong, so he puts some conservatism in it. The river forecaster, he doesn't want to wake everybody up at 2 a.m. and say, holy smokes, are we in trouble? So everybody just couches it a little bit, and then pretty soon it's a little late. The technology's there. One of the local weather guys for, well, not local, he was the head meteorologist for Global TV, spoke at a panel that we were at last year, and yeah, he's absolutely comfortable that the technology is there to predict storms, 24/8, and in some cases even a week out to order of magnitude. But are we using and exploiting that information well enough? Or are we kind of keeping it secret so that we don't let it out of the bag? So that's probably very important, that we change the way that we look at sharing that information. And maybe it's okay to be wrong, and we have to champion that, that we tried and moved forward. So again, back to the layer approach and the responsibility. As much as we try, as private industry, as we try as policymakers, as governance, people have to know to take care of themselves. And as such, they have to be responsible for some of what they do. Now, on the same note, I think that we owe it to them to let them know that what they're in for. And while we might say that 1 in 100 is a floodplain level, what if they're in the 1 in 20? What if they're on a street that we've decided is the overland flow route for those storm sewers that are going to overflow at a 33 or a 20% level? So I think we owe a duty to the public to let them know those things of what our design parameters were. And as that one sign showed a couple slides back, here's the high water mark. Done quite frequently in the US. I don't know that we see it a lot in Canada, with just notifying people how high the water can get and where. So again, the homeowner in the red, other critical infrastructures, be it a hospital, be it a water treatment plant, again, get them up and away from the risk and mitigate that risk so that we don't have the challenges to deal with. The more things that are dealt with in advance, or the less you have to deal with in the recovery. And I might say that the response and the preparedness are excellent achievements to have, but you will be in recovery someday. And that recovery is the tough part, and it depends on how many orders of magnitude those variables change, the length of that recovery is going to be. The more things that you can take off the table, and maybe not with certainty, but move the water plants up and higher, move them away from the erodible river banks, or protect them, things like that will make a big difference in your life going forward. 2013 was the transformational year for Alberta. This graph here is produced by the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Shows in billions the damage that has happened. And, if you grab the slope of that curve, it's ever increasing. And I guess one of the thoughts that I'd propose is these are a lot of waterborne events. Are they a result of a changing climate, or are they a result of some of our design decisions in the past? Maybe we just didn't have enough data and we're trying to catch up and change. Maybe it's a combination of both. Nevertheless, there's things that are going to have to change. With High River, just some perspective to catch what was gone through there. Horseshoe Falls is about 2,830 cubes per second. The Highwood River going through High River probably eclipsed 2,000 cubes per second, but all the gauge stations were washed away. So based on some really good modeling that Worley Parsons did, they were able to say that it's that 2,000 plus range. Problem is you all know that Horseshoe Falls is pretty wide. The Highwood River through High River is anywhere from 30 to 40 meters wide. Okay, so we're probably trying to put a lot of water through a tiny place, and it didn't work, so it went around. They'd had floods before, and everybody muses, that's why they called it High River. And there had been several events in the past. This compares a 95, a 2005, and then the 2013 event with the 1995. 2005 was at 620, and 2000 was the 2013. And they had prepared, almost prepared, the community based on, just like we started out with Hazel in our discussion, of what that last known event was, and moved it forward from there, and that became the new, not expecting one of those variables to change greatly. And it becomes an exercise in the forecasting of, well, you know, you don't take that forecasting and move it forward and allow those variables to change a whole bunch, because anyways, we don't do it that way. In some areas, I think we got to stop and adapt and look at it differently. Certainly the U.S. Corps of Engineers and the Mississippi or the Red River, big rivers that deal with broad catchment areas, probably a little different rules than a tiny little river 30 to 40 meters wide, and what its capacity might be going through a community, and how high you might make the flood attenuation berms around that community, and what strategy you might employ. So sometimes some medieval engineering or dead reckoning might have to occur, and history is your reality in my view. So the impact on the capacity of the community. River peaked in 8.5 hours. The width of it went to 1.35 kilometers instead of 35 meters. Structures, lots was affected. And evacuations, huge amount of evacuations. The whole town. Pets, never forget the pets. Fire, flood, the pets are something that you've got to deal with and are near and dear to people, especially in evac zones. Becomes kind of a cute thing to deal with. But it's very dangerous. The whole idea is to drain the water and get people back into their homes, and they're angry when it's time to go home. They want the utilities on right away. So there's a real P3 in its most brutal form, is working as a public with the private utility companies to get the water on, the power on, the gas on for residents. Just going to blast through some of these. The lake, you've seen it in the rolling slides at the start, just a huge amount of water. 24 days we're able to get streets dry and pump it out, and real kudos to industry jumping in. There was an outfit by the name of Canadian Dewatering that dashed in there and helped us out on that. They've done a lot of oil sands work. Debris, about 6 months of their landfill capacity, and 6 months of debris had to be picked up and moved right away to get people back into their homes. When people come home, they're angry, and that thing's wet or it's got mud on it. It goes out on the lawn or out in the front and into the trucks. And what was really surprising and totally an unexpected problem for us was that a lot of the new Canadians driving the hauling trucks, they don't do it that way. When things flood in some rivers, that's a good place to go shopping, and it was quite amazing to see some of the scrounging that took place with the folks hauling. So the recovery, it took quite a while. This is kind of a neat slide. It's a bunch of teddy bears that were found all over the place, and one of the ladies in charge of the volunteers scooped them all up and washed them and put them back on the same shelf about a week after we'd cleaned up and people were coming into town. But it was a capacity issue. Calgary got hit. 100,000 people were evacuated, about 10% of Calgary. High River got hit, 13,000 evacuated, 100% of the community, including everybody that had to do the response. So they had to reach out to their neighbors. And like-sized neighbors was one of the very important things to do in the response, because the cities have lots of resources, but they've got so many resources, they don't know how some of the smaller places function. So they'll come rolling in and say, well, let's use 311 to take care of this and all the call volume. And some of the locals are going, 311 what? Anyways, it's just something it's nuances that are very important to be aware of. One of the big things in the recovery is knowing the condition of the assets and knowing where they are and how fast you can bring them on. And whether that's a lift station, whether that's the condition of a road, is very important. And whether it was in the Slave Lake fires and the aftermath of that, of how the water system was really overrun or the roads got baked, it's important to know that for when you go back to the province and the feds and say that was the condition before, this is the condition now. We've got to make it good again. If you have no comparative data, it becomes a negotiation. If you've got good asset management in place, you know the condition of those sewer lines, water lines, etc. This is out of the report card, infrastructure report card. Reg, Gear here, they'll probably talk it at the tables of just what we know and what we don't know about our municipal assets. And it's pretty important that we catch up on that. And I think we are very well, and certainly heard the adaptation of sustainability and asset management this past week at FCM. Remember that the actual river that sometimes you're going to combat is your asset, because often you drink the water from it, and in a lot of cases you put the sewage back into it, the treated effluent. But it's your asset. Don't forget that. That's kind of what the whole watershed is all about. All natural features, whether it's the flora, the fauna, the timber in your areas, it's all part of your asset management. Make sure you include that, just as you do the roads, the sewer, the water. Can you value it right away? No, but get it in your plan and make sure that that awareness is there so that you're able to trap what's there. The Envision tool. Envision is a tool that was developed by the American Society of Civil Engineers, the American Public Works Association, Harvard University, and they brought together other tools that they'd looked at and created a tool in which you could come up with a sustainability score of projects that you're doing, and more on horizontal infrastructure than vertical, and vertical's got lots of tools from LEED to you name it to deal with. But Envision, what it does is try to look at several areas from ecology to health and efficiency, and look at criteria where you can quickly score where your project might fit in the sustainability. On the right-hand column is the actual score you give, and down at the bottom right is a comparison to what the high scores are for particular areas. Tool's free to municipalities, and I highly encourage you to download it. To screen a project and use it is just really good. I've done quite a few with clients, and you can then from there tailor it and maybe change your approach to the whole project with respect to sustainability and how it fits into your overall community, and has really been a lot of fun, and probably is proving beyond expectation. That aspect of it is a pre-screening tool rather than an actual score tool to get an award out the back end. So again, where does it apply? It's free for the munis. It's a great thing to, on major projects, maybe just as the field staff do a tailboard for safety before they start on something, maybe the department heads sit down and spend half an hour and do a quick screening on a project with the Envision tool. The CPWA has recommended and adopted it as the tool to go forward in Canada. There's other groups that are looking at it and endorsing it as well. So to close up, prepare for the unexpected. It is going to happen. Water is a risky business. I always tell operations staff and design engineers, babies drink this stuff. Be careful. Take care of them. They can't fight for themselves. Droughts happen. Floods happen. I always try to use the approach of CPR, and that is conservation, preservation, and reservation. So if we conserve it and don't just wildly use it and overuse, if we preserve it by treating it, whether by ground effects or treatment methods mechanically or otherwise, puts the watershed in pretty good shape. And droughts have probably caused more economic loss than most of the floods have. So maybe we should reserve some water for the future to help us through those floods. So thank you all for taking the time to share your knowledge today, to learn for the future, and a bunch of the folks that shared photos and slides to help me put together the presentation this morning. So thank you very much. I'd entertain some questions if you like, but I don't know where we are on the agenda, John. I think I might be 3 or 4 minutes over, so we'll see where you want to go. Thanks, everyone. Okay.
Thank you very much, Darwin. That was really insightful, really helpful. And now we want to open it up to the audience for a short Q&A. I believe we have a mic set up right over here. If there are anyone, there's two mics set up, one on this side and one right there. So please, if anyone has any questions for Darwin, now's the time. We've got a couple people, yeah.
Thank you, Darwin. That was really excellent. The Envision tool, fantastic. Is that available? How is that accessible? Where does one get a hold of it and deploy it?
Okay, the Envision tool is available. It's been around, widely being circulated for probably about a year now. There's a website here, sustainableinfrastructure.org out of the States. And as a municipality, you can go on there, register into it, or as an authority or public agency, and download it. I think virtually every consulting firm has trained trainers or have what is called an ENVSP, Envision Specialist, that are getting certification to help people score their projects if they're going for accredited scoring. But to use it, to sit around and do the round table, it's available on the web. You can get it right away and use it and there's a great tutorials involved on the website as well.
We'll open up to one more question. Okay, well.
So I think everybody needs a big stretch. Give her one of those. Anyways, thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, John.
So 1 second, Darwin. 1 second.
Oh.
So we want to thank you very much for joining us today. And as a token of our appreciation,
Oh, wow.
we want to give you a little piece of our home so you can take back to yours. This beautiful frame photo of the Credit River, taken by one of our staff at Credit Valley Conservation.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Tom.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you.